who are the Gentiles? First, let's talk about the physical Gentiles, because yes, there are spiritual Gentiles too. The physical Gentiles were people who weren't Israelites, people who were uncircumcised. This arrangement was set up in Genesis chapter 17, verses 7 to 14. If you didn't come from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, you just were a Gentile, an outsider. Israel would frequently interact with these Gentiles because it was alone in this sea of barbarians. Sometimes they would make peace with them, like in Joshua chapter 9 verse 15, but usually they would fight against them, like in Judges chapter 11 and many other places in the Bible. However, these Gentiles would eventually destroy Israel in AD 70 and AD 135. Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed by the Romans and everyone had to pack their bags and leave. This was prophesied a few decades before by Jesus Christ, who said, "And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." Luke chapter 21, verse 24. Jerusalem being trodden down makes sense because, okay, it was destroyed. There was literally nothing left. But what does the times of the Gentiles mean? Well, for 2,000 years after that, Israel was always ruled by Gentile powers. Israel couldn't really be independent, especially since most of the people had had to leave. It was this period that was considered the times of the Gentiles because it was the Gentiles who had the power and the influence in the area. It was only in 1948, when many of those autocracies that were controlling Israel collapsed, that Israel could finally become a nation again. Then the Gentile times were over because Gentiles were no longer in charge. Now that we understand who the physical Gentiles are, we can talk about the spiritual Gentiles. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. Matthew chapter 20, verse 28. This wasn't restricted to just Israel. He gave his life for everyone in the world, which is why there are many Christians who aren't, Israelites. What this means, though, is that the idea of a Gentile had to be redefined, because obviously, if we stuck to the definition of an old Gentile, then we would all be sinners and there would be nothing we could do about it because many of us haven't come from Abraham. Therefore, St. Paul said, "Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God." 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 19. This was strengthened by St. Paul again in Romans chapter 2, verses 28 to 29. "For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God." The Jews are people who worship God, so St. Paul is saying that anyone who worships God can also be considered a Jew. And from there, we now know who spiritual Gentiles are. If spiritual Jews are people who worship God instead of just Israelites, then spiritual Gentiles are people who do not worship God, who do not care about God. They want to be liked by people. They don't want to be spiritual and care about God. This simply isn't the kind of person that God is looking for. We have to circumcise our hearts instead of our you-know-what, in order to be considered true children of God. We have to reject the world. As it was said in Deuteronomy, "Circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked." As it was said in Jeremiah, "Circumcise yourselves to the Lord, and take away the foreskins of your heart, ye men of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem, lest my fury come forth like fire, and burn that none can quench it, because of the evil of your doings." Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 4. Obviously, my advice would be then, we want to be like spiritual Jews. We are physical Gentiles, and that isn't going to change because Many of us did not come from Abraham, but we can be spiritual Jews, and we can obtain the blessings that come with that, while the spiritual Gentiles are going to be destroyed because they sin against God. Following people like that is just like following the devil, according to 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 3. And that is where I'm going to stop with this Bible Q&A. Who are the Gentiles? Physical Gentiles are people who aren't Israelites, whereas spiritual Gentiles are people who don't believe in God and his works. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe.